Hello and welcome to World News Tonight here on TVP World with me, Hashim Kumar. Our main topic this evening will be Donald Trump's brand new peace plan for Ukraine, but that's not the only thing we'll be talking about. Let's take a look at some of the headlines. Stronger sanctions against the Kremlin, strengthening NATO, Lend-Lease for Ukraine, and lifting restrictions on the use of US weapons against Russia. These could be some of the elements of Donald Trump's plan for Ukraine. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has arrived in China for an official visit. This is an opportunity for both countries to deepen economic cooperation. Many believe that the series of fires in Europe are connected to the actions of Russian secret services. Former U.S. Secretary of State and Trump ally Mike Pompeo has revealed a potential peace plan for Ukraine should Donald Trump return to the White House. Trump himself has been promising that he would end the war in Ukraine as soon as he was back in power. Let's take a closer look at the Republican nominee's potential peace solution.
On Friday, the Wall Street Journal published an article by David Urban and Mike Pompeo detailing possible peace solutions for the war in Ukraine. Starting with a critique of the current administration, Pompeo listed several policy ideas, many of which have been criticized for having little to do with putting an end to Putin's war.
First of all, you have to recognize that the editorial in the Wall Street Journal uses Ukraine as an excuse for policies that have little to do with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. They use it as a pretext for making that demand, that repeated demand, which is other countries have to give more money to Ukraine, while the U.S. therefore can contribute less.
The supposed peace plan also includes investment in the U.S. fossil fuel and defense industries, and even efforts to stabilize the Middle East. Only 3 points relate to Ukraine directly: imposing tougher sanctions on Russia, creating a $500 billion Lend-Lease program for Ukraine, and lifting all restrictions on the type of weapons Kiev can use. President Zelensky has long been asking for the restrictions to be removed. If implemented, these policies would be conducive to a Ukrainian victory, but there is little evidence that Trump would actually enact them.
Pompeo, in fact, might have personal belief that Ukraine should be supported. But there's a difference between Pompeo floating these ideas and saying that they are Trump's policies. Donald Trump is a transactional businessman who happens to have been U.S. president and wants to do so again. So if Russia makes him a good offer on Ukraine, or if Russia can convince him that Ukraine would only make him a bad offer, he'll side with Vladimir Putin.
Trump has been a vocal critic of Biden's handling of the war in Ukraine and pledged to end the conflict immediately. He has yet to provide any details on how peace could be achieved. His running mate, J.D. Vance, is, however, a staunch opponent of financial support for Ukraine and voted against several aid packages.
I don't think spending another $61 billion of American money actually helps the Ukrainians that much because, again, our munition supplies are fundamentally depleted. There's only so much that we can do with additional dollars.
Trump has also criticized the Biden administration's spending on aid to Ukraine, calling Zelensky a great businessman during the presidential debate in June. Although Zelensky claims that Kyiv will happily work with either administration, some experts believe that with Trump in the White House, Ukraine will be put at a significant disadvantage.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinkin is on a 2-week tour of Asia, during which he's expected to make the case for the current administration's expanded commitment to the region. Biden's decision not to seek re-election raises the question of whether he will remain committed to the previously given foreign policy pledges.
Antony Blinken met with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang on the sidelines of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Foreign Ministers meeting in Laos. China's provocative actions in the Pacific region and its support for Russia were on the top of Blinken's agenda. Crucially, an agreement to maintain military-to-military communication was reached. Prior to the meeting, Blinken stressed the importance of bilateral communication with China.
We have restored regular high-level engagements between our countries, and that's vitally important because if you want to avoid any kind of unintended conflict, you've got to start by talking, by communicating.
Blinkin addressed the ASEAN representatives, stressing his country's commitment to maintaining good relations with the bloc.
We've been, I think, a good partner to ASEAN for 50 years now. We want to make sure that the comprehensive strategic partnership that we have with ASEAN really fully takes flight, and we're working very hard on that.
The remaining stops on his Asia tour include Vietnam, Japan, the Philippines, Singapore and Mongolia. As Donald Trump is widely seen as a transactional politician who might revise existing alliances, Southeast Asia is watching the ongoing presidential race with caution.
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has arrived in China for her 5-day-long state visit. Meloni's main goal during this trip is to boost bilateral trade and discuss Italy's withdrawal from China's Belt and Road Initiative.
Giorgia Meloni, alongside her entourage, including her daughter, came off the plane and onto the tarmac in Beijing. Ahead of them are 5 long days of meetings and negotiations with top Chinese officials, including Chinese President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Li Qiang. Described as two countries with an ancient civilization by Chinese Foreign Minister Mao Ning, Rome and Beijing marked the 20th anniversary of comprehensive strategic partnership this year. Despite the joyous occasion, the relationship between both countries isn't exactly all roses, as there have been some bumps in the road that Meloni is hoping to smooth out during her first trip to Beijing since being elected. In late 2023, Italy decided to withdraw from Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. Analysts have attributed Rome's decision to pressure from the US to distance itself from China.
China firmly opposes smearing and undermining cooperation in developing the Belt and Road Initiative and opposes confrontation and creating division among the camps.
Despite the bad blood stemming from Italy's withdrawal from BRI, both countries continued to closely cooperate in the economic field. Some experts have also said that Meloni's visit to Beijing is likely to promote fostering friendly relations with China to other EU and G7 countries.
Arson seems to be Russia's latest tactic for destabilizing Western countries. Our reporter Kazimierz Wysiak took a closer look at some of the major fires which have taken place in Poland over the last several months. Here's his report.
We are here at Marewilska 44 shopping mall in Warsaw, or rather, what's left of it. I remember on May 12th seeing huge plumes of smoke rising over the city and thinking that can't be anything good. And I was right. This entire shopping mall burned to the crisp on that day. And this was one of the first major fires in Poland, which the Polish services are saying that could have been done by Russian spies. The fire of Marewilska 44 spread incredibly fast, despite the mall having several anti-fire measures in place. I spoke with one of the store owners who in a single day lost everything that he had built for more than 15 years. For him, the wounds are still very fresh.
Demony niedalekiej przeszłości są aktualne.
The demons of our recent past haunt us. Whenever a phone call wakes me up, I'm still afraid. I was woken up by a phone call on that day and lost my life's work. I saw it burn on live TV.
Despite almost none of the stores being insured, the store owners refuse to lose hope.
Pani prezes.
The center's president of the board provided many store owners with psychological help. All the temporary barracks put in place in such a short time are also thanks to her. She's helping day and night to get us going again.
Both the Polish services and high-ranking government officials cited Russian sabotage as a possible reason behind the incident.
We have no doubt that the activity of the Russian services, also cooperating with the Belarusians, is very high, and there is no point in fooling ourselves here.
The Internal Security Agency arrested at least 5 suspects in the case on terrorism charges. Other arsonists may have been caught in Ukraine this week. Ukrainian authorities announced a bust of a spy network on Thursday, hired by Russia to set major fires in Poland. Their aim was to put the blame on Ukraine in order to discourage Poles from supporting their neighbors. While these incidents are grabbing the public's attention, the Polish fire department says we should keep our cool.
Firstly, we need to remember that not all major fires are the result of sabotage. Huge fires happen by accident as well. In previous years, by July, we had about 70 fires. This year, it's been about 50.
Investigations into the fires in Poland are still ongoing. Unfortunately, we can most likely expect more acts of sabotage in Poland and in the region as long as Russia keeps waging its war in Ukraine. From Warsaw, TVP World, Kazimierz Łysiak.
Sunday will mark perhaps the most important presidential election in recent Venezuelan history. Incumbent President Nicolas Maduro will face off against his opposition rival Edmundo González to see if the socialist government could be upended after a quarter of a century in power.
With just hours remaining before the polls open, Venezuelans in support of the opposition candidate Edmundo González, despite their different backgrounds, agree on one thing: change is needed.
Venezuela hopes that this new government will be a transition government. Let's leave behind so much struggle, confrontation, corruption, and all the disasters of the last 25 years of public administration. We need change. Change is coming, and voting is the instrument to achieve it.
Since seizing power in 2013, Nicolas Maduro has ruled Venezuela with an iron grip, dominating key institutions in the country. The ruling coalition, led by Maduro's party, the socialist PSUV, controls over 90% of seats in the National Assembly, leading to its control over the Supreme Tribunal of Justice and the National Electoral Council. Many Venezuelans don't agree with Maduro's policies, which have led the country away from the US in favor of fostering closer relations with countries like Russia, Cuba, Iran, and China. Not only that, but the country's enduring economic and political crisis led to nearly 8 million Venezuelans choosing to leave their home country in the last 10 years. Immigration is also a part of the upcoming election, as international and domestic polls predict that if Maduro stays in office for a third term, as much as 10% of the Venezuelan population might choose to live elsewhere.
No one wants to experience hunger. Who wants to feel hunger? Everyone wants to eat, to live better. That's why we left Venezuela, because the government is a dictatorship.
Despite their mobilization behind a new presidential candidate, many Venezuelans are uneasy about Sunday's elections, as Nicolas Maduro promised peace and tranquility if he is elected, and a bloodbath if he were to lose.
Polish athletes competed today in various disciplines at the Paris Olympics. The world's #1 in women's tennis, Iga Świątek, won her first match against Romanian Irina Begu. The Polish men's volleyball team were also successful in their first group stage match against Egypt.
Polish fans have a lot of faith in both Iga Świątek and the men's volleyball team, as these two disciplines are Poland's specialty. But these are not the only disciplines in which Polish athletes competed on Saturday. Polish horse riders, swimmers and female fencers also performed on the first day after the opening ceremony. Polish President Andrzej Duda will be cheering them on personally, as he will stay in Paris until Sunday. On Thursday, he attended the official dinner in the Louvre with the French president and other world leaders.
The Flow country, located in the Northern Highlands of Scotland, has been recognised as the first peatland in the world to receive a UNESCO World Heritage status.
The Blanket Bog, which is a vast flat peatland formed in a particularly cool region of high humidity in Scotland, won the World Heritage Committee's recognition after the agency annual meeting in New Delhi.
Flow country represents 5% of all blanket bog resource in the world, but it's also in really good condition compared to other places. So it's a brilliant example of what a blanket bog can look like and the type of species that you can find here.
According to Flow Country's UNESCO bid team, the new status will help scientists to better understand this complex yet fragile ecosystem.
And finally, there'll be more research done, so better understanding on how to manage and how to protect these ecosystems going forward.
Flow Country now sits among other UNESCO World Heritage sites like the Great Barrier Reef, the Galapagos Islands and the Everglades.
In Trump's latest peace plan, as described by former US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, we can see the desire to end the war as favourably as possible for Ukraine. Is this really the case? Will the issue of Ukraine be played out before the US presidential election? I invite you to join the conversation. To discuss this, we are joined by Roman Rieveld. He's a lawyer and US advisor to Credo, a consultancy. Welcome to TVP World, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
It's a pleasure, sir. So let's start with Mike Pompeo. How would you characterize his relationship with Donald Trump at the moment? Is he speaking on Trump's behalf when he says things like this?
Well, I don't think so. I think that this is a wishful thinking rather than anything else. And Pompeo is probably trying to get into good services and feelings of Trump for the future administration if Trump wins the election. Pompeo used to be, like Vance, critical of Trump on many occasions, and then he turned over and became a great supporter of Trump. After I read the article in the Wall Street Journal that produces this opinion from Pompeo and Urban, who is another former official of the U.S. government, I looked frantically for any other confirmation of this to be a plan for Trump, and I couldn't find any confirmation. Quite the contrary, all the other publications indicate that first of all, Trump does not have plan for Ukraine, except that he says he will stop the war in 24 hours, which everybody sort of assumed that it means stopping all the assistance to Ukraine and letting Russia take it over. Second, the platform of the Republican Party disclosed on convention, the 2025 packet with 900 pages long policy statement made by Heritage Foundation does not even mention Ukraine, talks about peace in Europe. Vice President-elect, potential-elect Vance is saying things quite clearly that he's against any assistance to Ukraine. All the elements included in that Pompeo's article on the plan are actually easy to be debunked because they go against what Trump and Vance and all the other Republicans said in the past. So I don't think this is a plan. You don't disclose plan by having your former crony to publish an opinion article in the Wall Street Journal. You do it by means which make it much more reliable. So I don't think this is a plan. This is a wishful thinking of Pompeo and saying that if Trump ever reads this article, which is doubtful, then he should adopt this kind of plan in the future.
I see. So basically, your assessment is that Pompeo is saying this to get back into Trump's good books and find a place in Trump's presidency should he win in November. But he does make he makes a number of interesting points, but one of them is that he says, the reason a plan like this would be attractive to Trump is because aid to Ukraine, in fact, means aid to the arms industry in the US to make the armaments which are then sent to Ukraine. Now, would you agree that might well be quite interesting to Trump?
But this is the things being done right as we speak. The amount of money that was assigned to Ukraine in a couple of legislations recently, they all go to the U.S. industry to produce armament that is being sent to Ukraine, especially the ammunition. So this is not new. Everything that is being done for Ukraine in a major part is helping American military industry. And only portion of that money goes to Ukraine to support administration and their vital services for the people. So there's nothing new in that statement. This is what Biden administration has been doing for the last 4 years.
That's true, but it's often not perceived in that way. Would you agree, Mr. Rivold? I mean, I think a lot of people just assume that, the US is sending lots of cash to Ukraine to spend on weapons and no one knows where it's gone. So perhaps that's a story that needs to be told. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. This is a lot of things are not being perceived by the American public about things which are happening abroad. And portion of it is that there are divided media on that. And if you listen to Fox News, you will find out that only terrible things happen in the relationship between US and Ukraine, and everything is being done wrong because, pursuant to Trump, Biden is the worst president in the history. Reading the other media, you find out that Biden is one of the best presidents in history, as good as Roosevelt used to be, and that's difference of opinion. So if you listen to one side of media, you're going to find out that there's very little information about what's really happening with the assistance to Ukraine.
Yes, quite. Well, we shall see how much of that comes out and how it's presented. Now, American politics has been rather exciting over the last couple of weeks, hasn't it? I mean, there's been the attempted assassination of former President Trump. There has been Biden finally stepping down and Kamala Harris appearing as the nominee for the Democratic Party. Bearing all of this in mind, I think the US public is somewhat confused as to what to think, unsurprisingly. But do you think a Harris presidency would influence substantially the current Ukraine strategy were she to be voted in?
Well, first, to answer your previous question is that yes, the Americans are not as much confused as appear to be enthusiastic about the change in the run for the presidency, and Kamala Harris is awakening a new hopes to Democrats and the whole nation about having the election to be done in the proper way. And in terms of Ukraine, I don't see, nobody knows what Harris's policy is toward Ukraine, and there is no reason to believe that's any different than the present policy of Biden. So if Harris is elected president, we're going to see the continuation of what's happening, and some of the elements in the plan that Pompeo put in paper in the Wall Street Journal are going to be implemented by Harris, because they are also reasonable steps of a plan of any American presidents toward Ukraine, including the Lend-Lease, including the assistance in many ways. Expansion of NATO is problematic because the 10th article of NATO says that a country which has territorial disputes cannot be joined in the NATO. So that might take a little bit more than just a goodwill of the American president. But other elements of that plan, quote, not real plan, are probably going to be implemented by whoever is going to be next president. And as Kamala Harris, she probably would do that as well.
Yes, but one of the differences between what Mike Pompeo has said and the Democratic response to Ukraine has been the use of US weapons to attack military bases in Russia. Whereas, according to Pompeo's suggestion, idea, call it what you will, he says Trump would lift that ban. What do you think? Do you think Kamala will lift that ban? Or is that a contentious issue?
It's easier to say than to implement it. I mean, I am pretty certain that the issue of what is the plan for using the American weapons against Russia is something that is not known to general public. And I think that if there was a good reason to use those weapons without any restrictions, it would have been done. So whoever comes to the White House and will get information from the sources that are not available to public on what is the situation, probably is going to have to use that information to pursue the interests of the United States, as well as all the other countries. So it's very difficult to say that the plan to take all the restrictions on the American weapons is going to be done, because I don't think this is such an easy answer, and it could have been done easily, would have been done a long time ago, because I don't see any reason why Biden would have different approach toward American weapons than any other president in his position.
Well, I think one of the reasons that was put forward, I'm not sure if it still applies, is that Biden didn't want escalation, whatever that meant, considering where things are at the moment in Ukraine. On a more general front with Kamala Harris, you say that basically it's more of the same if she gets in as president, whereas other commentators are saying she's actually far more left-wing than Biden. Would you agree?
I'm not certain. We have very little information on her position. We know that she's going to be very strong on reproductive rights. We know that she dealt with the immigration, which is a very conservative approach of the United States to the immigration, and whatever the Republicans say about her being too soft on immigration is not holding water, because she has actually limited the illegal immigration to the United States, and it's now less than it was during the Trump era. And on other issues, yes, she's probably going to go forward with implementation of the climate control, and yes, maybe equality and fight against discrimination in the United States would be a part of her heritage, which is very much necessary, because that has been subject to dispute for recent years, and conservatives trying to return to the white America. That's not going to be very well received by the American society. So in this sense, yes, Kamala Harris probably will go farther than Trump, and maybe farther than Biden. Take on the reproductive rights. Biden never mentioned abortion. He is Catholic, and he has some limitations. Kamala Harris does not have those limitations, and she is fighting openly for the reproductive rights of women, which means making abortion available to all the women, which is supported by 60% of the American society. So it's not a surprise.
Right. Well, one of the criticisms that's levelled against Kamala Harris is, of course, the border, which you mentioned, and apparently, they say the exact opposite. 20 million illegals in the country have entered since Biden's presidency. But the other thing is her record on prosecution. As State Attorney General in California, she was seen as particularly hard on fairly soft crimes, and the opposite on harder crimes like murder and rape. That's what her record says. How do you think she's going to be if she is president?
Oh, that record is not going to have any impact on her as a president. One thing is to be prosecutor, and another thing is to be president. I think that the crime in California is different than crime in other states, and from the point of view of the White House, it's a different matter, and different approach will be necessary. Besides, I'm pretty certain that the criticism of Kamala Harris, as some reporters and journalists say, is unjust. She was as good a prosecutor as any other. She actually won her elections twice, and she was a very effective prosecutor. And she has a great experience in that. So the thing is that the Republican Party now is in great need to find the dirt and negative things on Kamala Harris, since they were not prepared for this change that is taking place in Democratic Party nomination for the candidate for presidency, and they are having a hard time finding. So they are digging out things which are not necessarily well supported and irrelevant. What her approach to crime when she was prosecutor has nothing to do with her presidency of the future in the whole America. I think that Kamala Harris probably would be a very good president if she's.
Yes, well, I think, Mr. Revold, the question was around who she would nominate as federal court judges and so on. But unfortunately, we have to end the conversation there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Roman Revold, for joining us tonight. Come and see us again soon. Have a good evening.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Well, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And that's all from us in this bulletin. Don't go away. As always, lots more coming up. Goodbye.